Okay, you guys, I'm just trying something new because I was listening to this debate and I wanted to respond because I was also a teacher and they were talking about how much racism affects Black boys and their success. And I wanted to see if I could play it. Like, I'm not really sure how this works. So if this ends up working, then we will go ahead and um, continue with this live because I want to just respond to this. So let me log on to my YouTube on my phone and then we'll do this. Let's see. Let me log on to my YouTube on my phone. Okay, so I'm going to try and play this and make sure it comes through. Let me back it up a little bit so we're not at the right spot.
Intellectually dishonest.
And then we'll...
Homicide.
Let's see. Let me log on to my YouTube on my phone. So I'm going to try and play this and make sure it comes through. Give me 1 second, guys. Back it up a little bit so we're not at the right spot.
Intellectually dishonest.
It's working. Okay, so we're going to chat about this because as a teacher, I think that number one, let me tell you guys something. One of the people in this argument, I guess, debate, brings up the diagnosis of Black boys with ADHD. And I actually tried to prove this with, I was working with a school psychologist because they're the ones who end up, treating these kids oftentimes. And she was like, Joanna, like, there's not enough research to support that claim. And I was like, are you kidding me? All these people are walking around saying that there's an overdiagnosis. She's like, I'm trying to find stuff. I can't find it, which is interesting. All right, so we're going to listen to this and we are going to, and I'm just going to talk about what I think as a teacher and as someone who worked in low income schools and worked with Black children. Of course, I was a Black teacher, so I ended up working with a lot of Black students. And I worked with a lot of students who were low income and not Black too, because he's going to make some points about the fact that all males are failing in school. Not all males. I should rephrase that. A lot of males are doing worse than women, and I think there's a lot of reasons why, and we can't just call it race. So let me just edit this really quickly, and then we're gonna get started. So then we'll get started. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm really clunky at this because this is like not my thing. Like I normally just hop on. This is not my thing. Okay, here we go. Save changes. Okay, let's listen, and then I'm just gonna talk and respond. Okay, so let's press play.
It's a lot different. Now there is an argument rather that lack of access to resources and thus nourishment and thus development can cause people to be maladapted, and thus bad behavior perpetuates itself in certain areas. That makes sense to me. I wouldn't argue against this. I, however, have a problem when you can't understand how health issues specific to Black women could be a result of our inability to provide good neighborhood and access to healthy food. That is very directly related, but we can argue that tangential relationship. I'm not about to do it.
The other thing I had was relating to Black women outpacing white women on equal footing when racism is somewhat accounted for.
They are the same or equal to, or about same or slightly ahead, sorry.
The research indicates that Black women become on equal footing or slightly ahead to a negligible amount, but Black men don't do the same with white men given the same circumstances.
Yeah, they fall behind.
Do they do good, well, poorly?
They fall. So they would leave
When
if
you
they
say
start
fall behind, are you saying like falling behind as in they're not at the same
socioeconomically.
level, or
So they
falling
move.
behind, like still in poverty?
Yeah,
Here's
they move
my question.
out of the middle class to poverty.
Here's my question: how much of that accounts for white patriarchy?
Oh,
Like-
that's weird. That's what I would assume. Not just
Okay.
So it's
I want to get to the part where they're talking about schools. Hold on.
it's like it's this whole course, right? So first off, I was a teacher, so I've been in the actual classroom and seen the differences in how boys are prepared for school. Like you already pointed out that like men, full stop, regardless of race, are not doing as well in school as women. So that's like,
which is why I can't say it's race. That's
Right.
why. All right.
well, but then you have to add race as a variable.
No, see, I knew that's what you were going to do. This is why I just said men across the board, which is men literally are checking out of school and society. Like they're like, yeah, we're not doing
I don't disagree, but like if my son checks out of school and society as a whole versus somebody else's, somebody who's not Black son, the outcomes and the threats to that outcome are very different. So you can't just not use race
Agreed.
because it's not convenient to the point. It's very.
I would argue that the outcomes are different given what his environment is. So there are children, boys, Black women, children, right? There's a lot of celebrities' children who do not go to college, who opt out of school, but they don't automatically fall into degenerate behavior, right? They, depending on their circumstances, depending on their parenting, depending on their influences, depending on their environment, they make different choices. So let's not pretend like the only thing that matters is your race. Actually, what matters is your environment, your parenting, your motivation, because there's a lot of kids who drop out of school, but if their parents were sort of like those parents who were like, okay, you can drop out of school, but here's like 50 million other opportunities for you, then that's a different story. So let's not pretend like parenting doesn't matter and your environment doesn't matter. What it sounds like is the assumption is that if Black boys drop out of school, immediately that means that they're going to fall into criminal behavior. That's not true. That's only true if their environment is like that. So again, I worked in low-income Asian environments, low-income Hispanic environments, and low-income Black environments. The one thing they had in common was lower income. So students who were in lower income environments and they chose to drop out, yes, fell into degeneracy. Students who were in higher income environments worked for their family business. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's a difference. We're trying to bypass the 50 other factors that matter besides race. I'm not into it, but here we go.
Material to the outcome.
Well, wait, so that's different though. Arguing that the consequence of checking out is different based on race, I would agree, but that race is the reason for opting out is hard to argue when all groups of men
the disparity. Out. That's how we explain the disparity. So
again, I would argue that the disparity is not necessarily race, the disparity is environment. So because the percentage of, this is where we have to go deeper into statistics. We can't just look at something on the surface level. I would argue that there are multiple factors that contribute to that, and that it's also the fact that the percentage of Black people who are living below the poverty line, the percentage of Black men, boys who have parents without degrees, who have parents without, because we know that those are indicators, and the fact that we have there's a promotion of degeneracy in our culture, that contributes as well. It's not just that they're Black. Like, let's stop the madness.
How much are you encouraged to opt out? How much are you shown that opting out is more realistic than actually succeeding?
Okay, and the argument is who, to me, this is my question, who is promoting people to opt out? Is that, be honest, it's not teachers. Teachers are not walking around saying you better opt out. I would argue that the environment that socially, that culturally, television, music is all suggesting that is a better option for Black boys. I would argue that 100%, but you cannot blame it on teachers and you cannot blame it on women, especially because women are the ones who are succeeding, especially Black women in the community. You can't really say that. It's hard for me to legitimize that assertion. I would argue that it is the environment. I would argue that it is media marketing. I would argue that it is other Black men who are encouraging boys to opt out. But I would be very careful to say that it's teachers. Teachers may not be as invested as they were talking about earlier in this, these students who are poorly behaved, but they're not encouraging students to opt out. They're not encouraging students to not graduate. I don't know a single teacher who's like, you shouldn't graduate. Like, stop.
How
But
do the
who is
people
encouraging men to opt out? Women aren't.
So
Are women? Wait,
the
are
whole
women encouraging men to opt out of school?
So how do I explain this? So I was a teacher, and this is something I've been grappling with in like my own content, etc. We identify the good ones early in terms of boys, and the good ones, and I'm sure you all can see this. We put every resource behind. Ooh, we love us a young Black man trying to make it, right? So like, but you might got 2 of them per class, and the rest of them niggas.
I would disagree. And he's being dishonest. We put energy and effort into those kids who are misbehaving because we are sending them to school psychologists. We're trying to make sure that they get diagnosed. We're sending them the appropriate resources. We're finding special ed teachers for them. We're calling their parents. A lot of teachers are trying to work. We don't actually have to do that much work for those students who are doing well. We don't, because they're actually the easy ones. So I'm not sure what environment that he was teaching in, but where I was at, we put in a lot of energy and effort to try and get those kids back to center. The kids who were struggling, who were falling behind, who were having behavior issues, we put a lot of energy and resources into them as a school. That's why we would sit in these, ridiculous workshops about positive behavior and how to get students to, stay in your classroom. Yeah, are you kidding? Stop. That's a false claim that schools are putting more money into those students who are succeeding. They're not. The whole game in California, the whole game in the nation right now is how do we pull up the kids who are not doing as well? So stop.
Do not get the same treatment.
Agreed.
And so like I've heard some of the most anti-Black things come out of teachers' mouths, male and female alike. And surely that Black teachers in Black schools predominantly have Black women as teachers. So you can't not look at that reality and say, if we're looking at the outcome and we're talking about Black boys not feeling like they're able to succeed, not feeling like they have all the resources behind them, what I think we mistake is that there's definitely a handful of young boys, the good ones, that get every resource possible. And the rest of these dudes, they get what they can get. They better show something. They better show improve, or we shuffle them on out the door because they're a nuisance. They're a problem. You know what I mean?
The one disrupting the class gets sent to detention.
Yes.
Actually, they don't. Not anymore. They actually don't get sent to detention. They get kept in the classroom and disrupt the other students even more. So that's not even true, but I get the point. But why? So this expectations that teachers will then bend over backwards for a student who is consistently demonstrating defiance, like that's a lot to ask of a teacher. And I'm saying this as someone who's worked in these schools for 12 years. It's a lot of work. It took me a month at the beginning of the year to get the kids to buy in so that I didn't have those problems. So you can't just go around being like, it's their job to go fix these kids. What about their parents? And this is the lack of accountability that I'm just not about to deal with these people. It's like, you have to talk about the fact that the children who are the good ones know how to play the game because their parents taught them how to play the game. That's what the fact is.
I don't disagree with this. When you start diagnosing them with ADHD for no reason, it's a problem. But the teacher, unfortunately, has an impossible task to try to teach multiple people all at once while they are people who are disruptive, and the class doesn't lend itself to a couple people being disruptive, taking the time out to sit them down and talk to them about certain things, because there's another 10, 15, 20, depending on the class size, kids.
So I will say that I think that boys, so it's really interesting, even across the board, elementary to high school, boys are not really primed for this kind of education that we're doing now. They're really primed, they're really created and designed to have a more active education. So one thing that I did do in my classroom is I let the boys stand up when they were like, if I was lecturing, because you have to do some teaching, right? It was like 8 minutes on, 2 minutes off. I would let the boys stand up and like do their little thing on the desk, you know, because they're like, ma'am, you're having me sit down. Are you crazy? I remember when I was having teachers watch me teach, because I was a master teacher, they would be like, why are you letting him stand up? I'm like, because he's a boy. Because he's a boy. He needs to be doing this. Doesn't mean he's not listening to me. He would be sitting on his desk and standing and going like this. And that took me years to figure out. So I don't want to dismiss what either of them are saying. I do think there's this expectation that boys will sit down and be like, you know, be like girls. And because the schooling now lends itself more to feminine behavior, which is like sitting and paying attention and listening like that, and less exercise, because boys, when they get enough exercise, will sit down and pay attention. If you look at the way that they have transformed schools now, you realize that, yeah, they didn't really design it, because people used to have PE, rigorous PE, before they started classes, and then they would focus. They don't do that anymore. So it's more, it lends itself more to female students. But yes, teachers need to make some adaptations, you know, not diagnosing every kid with ADHD, make some adaptations, but that doesn't really, like, the ADHD thing is like such a small, like a speck in contrast to the plank of just ill-behaved children or children who are not doing well in school.
Kids that you need to tend to. And the mom generally having to go to work and provide because the dad isn't there, or the dad going to work because the mom isn't there. I don't care. We know statistically it's usually the mom, but doesn't lend itself well to that parent being able to take on schooling at home, right? So like, I can see the cyclical nature of poverty recreating itself.
Did you see that? I'm sorry, real quick, and I want your take on this. Did you see that video that went viral some months ago, where they had teachers observing children to see who misbehave, and none of the children were misbehaving, but every teacher was staring at the black boy, even the black woman teacher? Like, that's kind of the thing that, like, we're talking about. You know, you can't disentangle, like, so there's that. And so I want to be clear, because I know I'm trying not to look at the chat too much, but